Merchandising.
Yeah, that's a good way to start this. That lets people know that we're still their regular old friends that don't want anything from them except their money.
Now
What's up?
We've got merch for you.
Go to wehaveconcerns.com/shop and check out the new Brock Life t-shirt, Salmon Cannon t-shirt, Jetpack Rescue Squad t-shirt. So many t-shirt. Whoops, I opened the monster box.
Oh, classic mistake.
Classic mistake. Never open the monster box. This is We Have Concerns. Hi, Jeff Canada.
Hi, Anthony Carboni.
Hello, concerned citizens. Jeff, do you follow politics much?
Unfortunately. More and more. It's not so much I follow politics, it's that politics follows me.
Yeah.
It's that I can't
Never
avoid
trouble until trouble troubles you.
I can't avoid it anymore. I read this wonderful thing recently that said the best part that one of the inalienable rights we have is the ability to be able to ignore politics, and when politics becomes unignorable, something is horribly wrong.
Yeah. Well, I tend to think of that. We've talked about this before. I think of that as a luxury that we have had it certainly is a right. But it is also a luxury that we've had in the United States for a very long time.
Oh, sure. A lot of countries, you can't. And
we are very disengaged in comparison to a lot of friends that I have in different European countries or things like that, where it's just like, oh, we have 57 political parties, and I know all of them, and I know what they all stand for.
And I also know everything.
All of their I
also know everything about American politics, even though I don't live there.
Right, because they affect us, right? So we've been in this place where we don't have to follow it very much. Obviously, we are in a place now where many more people are getting active in politics, which I guess is a silver lining to everything that's been going on. If we come out of this and everybody is much more engaged than they used to be and educated than they used to be, I think that's cool.
Yeah.
And I think it's also important because there's an article that I saw on The Science of Us. We know how much I love The Science of Us. About something called the availability heuristic.
Ooh.
The availability heuristic is something that was used, it's used very highly by politicians, but it's especially used by Trump.
Okay, I'm listening.
The availability heuristic is the tendency of our brain.
I bet you he doesn't know that phrase. I bet you any amount of money he's never heard that phrase.
He doesn't know the phrase. He has a term for it, I'm sure, because it is something that he employs very well.
The best words is his phrase?
It is the best words. But what it is basically, if your brain does not have a wealth of data about a certain situation, if your brain does not have a wealth of experience about a certain situation, the first thing you will go to is sort of like the biggest, stickiest, most memorable piece of data that you have. So in politics, what the availability heuristic looks like, one of the most famous examples is Reagan's example of the welfare queen. The welfare queen is a woman that apparently had 5 different identities and 6 different husbands and 15 children that she was reporting, and was collecting a king's ransom.
Right.
A variable,
living like a queen, but stealing from
stealing from people.
Politic.
Now, was this welfare queen ever identified? No.
Right. She's a concept.
Did she not exist? We don't know. What we do know is that looking at welfare statistics, people don't really take advantage of welfare.
Right.
That's
this
not
is like
something that's been found.
The immigrant, the refugee that does terrorist attacks.
This is exactly what it is. Because what happened was, for years, the idea of this welfare scammer just wormed its way into the zeitgeist.
Right.
And now people are like, oh, yeah, it happens all the time. I know because I heard it. I know. We all know the story.
Right. And what you're saying is because they didn't have a firsthand account of people on welfare, that served as a placeholder for all people on welfare. That was the stickiest concept, so it stayed.
Right, because on the average, on a day-to-day basis, how often are we hearing statistics about welfare? How often are we looking into it? Unless you are somebody who's on welfare or affected by welfare, you probably don't think much about it.
Right.
So oh, I remember this story that I heard. And this is a survival instinct, right?
Right.
This is something that we have to do. Even if we tend to have data, but it's kind of murky and we haven't made a decision on it yet, we will use the availability heuristic to take the stickiest concept in our brain and use it and apply it and make it a belief.
Trans people want to go into your bathroom and spy on you.
Right. Which is not a thing.
Not a thing, but because
there is no evidence. We haven't found anybody evidence of a trans person assaulting somebody in a bathroom.
Right.
This is not a thing that exists.
Right. But because people don't have their own personal experience meeting and knowing and understanding trans people, they can disassociate and substitute in that concept of them. That's the stickiest. That's the one that stays.
Exactly. And this is why people can believe that immigrants are more violent.
Right.
When all studies show that actually immigrants are less violent.
Right.
And less prone to violent crime. Or, the media is underreporting terrorist attacks when they're not. If a terrorist attack happens, the media is going to be on it. What purpose would the media have in not reporting a terrorist attack when that shit is a ratings bonanza?
Right. Yeah. I mean, this reminds me of, when 10, 15, 20 years ago, the gay rights movement was a much more headline grabbing kind of thing, and gays and lesbians were trying to get more rights, and you would have people like Dick Cheney, whose daughter comes out, and all of a sudden Dick Cheney's like, "Oh no, it's cool. I'm cool about all those lesbians wanting equal rights because now I know someone that actually is in that situation." And I think it also points to why people in large metropolitan areas tend to have more liberal attitudes because they're just exposed to more different kinds of people.
Yeah.
And so when you actually see other people that aren't exactly like you, you sort of understand that people who aren't exactly like you are people too.
Right. Which is why I find it interesting, the idea of the bubble. I think there is like the liberal bubble.
Right.
Which I do think, it can be true to an extent, right?
Sure.
Because the one thing that we don't see every day living in a place like LA or living in a place like New York is we don't see what's going on in the Rust Belt.
Right.
Right? Or we don't see what's going on in the South.
Right.
So we do have ideas about what's going on in there, and sometimes those are incorrect. Yeah. Now, I will say this though. A lot of people I know who live in major cities were not born in those major cities.
Right.
They usually left from somewhere else.
Yeah.
My family is in the South and my family is in the Rust Belt.
Right.
And I moved to a large city.
Yeah.
So I have seen what goes on there. And I think that's why I get a little prickly about the reductionist idea of who voted for Trump and why. Mm-hmm. That's why I get a little more prickly about it than I think some of my friends do.
Sure.
Because it's I can see why they did it and it's awful, but I can see why they did it.
Right.
And I think all of that is availability heuristic, right?
Well, is availability heuristic just a fancier way of saying stereotype? Is it like a stereotype is a sticky thing because we all have a sense that it's true, but we don't, because it's a generalization that just kind of sticks in your brain?
It's probably better to say generalization because it can also apply to things and ideas, whereas stereotypes are more about people.
Right.
But yeah, sure. I think it's the same thing. It's a snap judgment.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And snap judgments are not always good.
Right.
And going with your gut is not always good. And that's something that we know.
So supplying that concept is really the thing that's kind of nefarious. And I guess, to be fair, both sides, we don't need to make this a political thing, but the idea that you can supply a very well-formed concept of the kind, an image that you can place in people's mind,
right,
is really the key concept here, right?
Sure.
Is form an image. That image takes the place, is a placeholder for information that was not there before.
It's honestly just effective public speaking, right? You look at the structure of a really good TED Talk or something like that, or anything you watch, any good public speaker, right? Even like a tech keynote. You look at what Steve Jobs used to do.
Right.
Start with a personal story about somebody.
Right.
And they need to do something.
Yeah.
That relates to your larger concept. We're talking about Trump doing it. Clinton did it too. with the Miss Universe contestant that she brought up, right?
Sure.
She gave this concept of Trump's hatred of immigrants and minorities and gave it a human face, gave it a person with a story that we all now knew. And a story sticks.
Right.
When we don't have data, a story sticks. Even if we do have data, I think a story sticks, which is why it's just like, it's just good public speaking. But the thing is, it can definitely be used like any sort of rhetorical tactic. It can be used as a weapon. It can be weaponized.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think we see that more and more in the political space. I feel like we've seen it more and more over like the last 20 years.
Yeah, and is that because we are willfully ignorant about it? Like, in order for this to work, there has to be availability, right? The availability heuristic needs availability. And the only time you have availability is when there's a gap in knowledge, right? It has to fill a gap. So is the reason that this is more common and more effective because there are more gaps in knowledge? Or I feel like in a connected information age, that would be the opposite, right? We would have less gaps in our knowledge about other kinds of people. But I guess we're self-isolating. We're selecting our own groups of people and getting more and more individualized and less exposed to. I
think we are exposed to so much more information, and information is much more readily available. But I think we're much more passive in how we take it in. We kind of, if I think about the way that I take in news, I kind of open up my phone in the morning or my computer in the morning or whatever. And the first thing I do is I scroll through feeds, right?
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, I do eventually, but I don't first thing in the morning hunt down specific news sources.
Right.
And you've selected, look up specific things that I want to know more about. Like I will.
You've selected those feeds, so you've decided what sources you.
We just take it in, right? Yeah. And because we don't dive any deeper after we take it in, we're sort of like filling in all those gaps on our own voluntarily with like the most surface level information. And when you think about what stories surface more and get spread more, it's usually stories about people, right? It's usually like these quick little stories about people doing something outrageous, whether it's outrageously great or outrageously cute or outrageously funny or outrageously horrible.
Yeah.
This is what we get.
Yeah, the human being is so addicted to story, to narrative. We need it. We can't live without it. Everything we do for entertainment is all about getting more stories, getting more and narrative, and anything we learn is built into a narrative. And we construct narratives out of nothing. Like, you don't, if it rains and you're trying to get somewhere, you don't go, hey, the weather was bad and I was trying to get there. You go, here's a story about how fucked up the weather was to me.
Yeah.
Like the weather didn't care about you, but it's like, the one day that I had to get downtown, we construct these narratives. We build our entire world through the prism of telling stories.
Well, because stories are how we learn. You think about fables and parables and fairy tales and all this stuff, and even the way our brain processes information, it's cause, effect, lesson. Cause, effect, lesson.
Right.
Live better. Die less. Be a better, safer thing.
Yeah.
And so we need narrative. Yeah. Our brain is built to look for narrative. If there's a bunch of unconnected things that happen to us during the day, our brain will try to tie them together because what bullshit is this where random shit happens? Dude, random shit. I don't learn anything from random shit.
When you phrase it like that, it really does contextualize it in a evolutionary way, right? Our big evolutionary advantage is our brains. And what's our brain do that helps us do anything? It's figure out ways to not make that mistake again. Right? Figure out ways to, as you said, live longer, survive better by putting points together and relating them to one another and going, okay, if Carl eats berry and Carl dies, don't eat berry.
Right.
Story. That's a story. That's an ABC.
There was a whole part of Caveman Carl's story that you didn't see, right?
Right.
Like, turns out Caveman Carl also, like,
he had congenital heart disease.
Yeah. Or like sex with a mammoth.
I shouldn't have been doing that.
And just don't
That's
do that.
classic
You got
Carl,
something
though.
weird from having sex with a mammoth.
That is so Carl.
That's so Carl, though.
You know, he's been talking about wanting to do that.
Yeah.
And I never thought he'd actually go through with it.
And I mean, like, look, Carl,
I saw those drawings on the wall.
it's literally the dawn of civilization. We don't really have a lot of mores yet, Carl.
But that's one of them.
That's not
one
like
of the
there's
few.
There aren't a lot of taboos, so I guess if you're gonna do this, you're gonna do it.
Did he ever invite you into his cave
But
and
it's
show
probably
you
the
those?
berries, though. Because I saw the berries.
Oh no, he definitely shouldn't
It
be
was
eating those
definitely the
berries.
berries.
I mean, I'm never eating those berries.
I would never eat those berries.
I might fuck a mammoth though.
I mean, I don't know. I've never seen somebody fuck a mammoth and die. But yeah, I mean, so much of what we do comes down to that. And when we don't have a story and we don't have a narrative, well, thank God somebody provided a narrative for me. How do I feel about welfare? Well, I don't know. I haven't read much about welfare.
Yeah.
I haven't looked at any studies about welfare. And I'm looking out for my survival and my dreams and my life, and I don't have a ton of time to read about welfare. Why should I? It doesn't affect me.
Yeah.
So what do I think about welfare? Oh, shit. That person's taking advantage. Oh, there are people that are taking advantage of it.
Yeah.
Shit, it's probably like real messed up.
Yeah.
We should probably get rid of it if it's just being taken advantage of or cut
Right.
it back.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like that story I heard about all those berry eaters.
Yeah.
They all fuck mammoths.
They all fuck mammoths.
all of them.
They're all perverts.
They're all perverts. Don't eat. If you eat those berries, you're probably a pervert.
We need to keep our children away from berries.
Yeah.
That's what I know.
If there's one that anybody that sells a berry should be locked up.
Yeah. I don't need any berry sellers in my tribe.
No way.
No way. So yeah, I think it's an interesting, you know, obviously the science of us has framed it in terms of Trump, and I think that's 100% valid because
Well, that's what's. Yeah.
it's how it is.
It's the story that we're living through now.
It's the story that we're living through now, and it's a story that I want to read about is like how Trump talks to people, right?
Right.
So good framing,
Yeah.
good use of the availability heuristic, but also he is a public speaker that speaks entirely in
Nonsense.
feeling
Oh,
and personal anecdote.
right.
So
And he kind of comes at it just naturally, right? He just sort of instinctively. I mean, maybe he's more diabolical than I think, but I don't think he's like, I'm going to employ the availability heuristic now.
no, but I think he does know that tell people a story, sell them on a story of a thing,
Right.
show them why they should care the way you care about a thing
Yeah.
in the exact same way. Show them that. And if it's a good enough story, then they'll take that story
Right.
and they'll buy the condo or the property or let you build
Or the
thing.
stakes.
You know what I mean? Or the stakes or
Yeah.
whatever. Like he is a salesperson. So he's
Sure.
like, what's the fastest, easiest, quickest way to get the deal?
It's interesting because I just watched that Sneaky Pete on Amazon Prime. It's real good. Giovanni Ribisi.
I've heard good things.
Bryan Cranston. Good stuff. About con artists.
Mhm.
And, you know, far be it from me to relate Trump to a con artist, but it's the same type of thing. It's tell a story that loops people in, that hooks them on the concept that you're trying to convey.
Right.
The story is more powerful than anything. The story will do 90% of your work. And
Yep.
then people will believe things that are even completely counterintuitive to their own well-being. Fuck.
Yeah.
We're just built to be duped.
Yeah.
We're built to be duped.
I think about myself as a kid. I think about myself younger. I think about myself even now. And there are certain times where something will pop into my head and I will be like, oh, this is the way I feel about this thing. Do I only feel this way about this thing because of my limited experience or because I went through
Right.
one thing or because I heard it? Is this secondhand information? And I think, the trick is just
It's hard
like,
to be that self-aware though.
and I
Because
do
you
it-
just feel things.
I do it very rarely
Yeah.
because that's the way we're built. But like, spend like the next few days, and really, when something pops up and you just believe it, and it feels like you just believe it. Like if you don't have any information, like
Yeah.
catch and see how much of this happens in your day to day life because it happens to me more than I think.
Oh yeah.
It happens to me more than I think.
We're
And if
built to be duped,
Yeah.
man. Well,
We're-
we just all end up fucking mammoths. And
Just
we didn't know
fuck-
why.
we don't know why.
It just happened.
You meet a smooth talking mammoth. He offers you a few berries.
Oh man. Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Next thing you know, mammoth fucker.
Hmm.
Boy. Yeah, but after you listen to this episode, spend a couple days, see how much it pops up, and see if like you're as analytical as you think you are, and let us know how you feel about it afterwards. I'm at @Carboni on Twitter.
I'm at Jeff Canada.
And hey guys, you know what would be like super rad of you? You know what would be like dope?
What?
You know what would be like the
Tell
dope?
me what's dope. I want to know.
You want to know what's dope? You want to know what's cool?
How to become dope.
Here's how to become dope. You head to patreon.com/wehaveconcerns.
Yeah. I'm hip.
And then you give us money. And here's why.
And you become dope.
And you become dope immediately.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a story about somebody who became dope.
I want to hear about this person who became dope and how I can be like them.
No, here's the deal. You may have noticed that we don't do ads on this show. We don't do them. We never have. We kind of fund the whole thing on our own.
Yeah. And that means you have the power to be our boss, our ad, our single source of being able to continue to do the show.
Yeah. So head to patreon.com/wehaveconcerns, throw a couple bucks our way, and you will see that you can grab some extra stuff. You can get early episodes, you can get bonus recordings, you can get all kinds of wonderful jazz, including monthly...
our smooth jazz album.
Our smooth jazz album, Wonderful Jazz, Volume 3. Now that's what I call wonderful jazz. But also like... a digital extra that we're putting up for all patrons this month is the animation that we showed at PAX South.
Yeah.
By Dinesh Syed, which is great.
Yep.
So good. And patrons will get like the first look at that. So if you want to see that and you want to get some extra stuff and you want the show to keep going, patreon.com/wehaveconcerns.